Well, this is the house I was basically brought up in. I wasn't born here. I was born a couple of streets down. It's all very local. I moved here. I was probably about 18 months. Lived here all my life until I left to get married. Basically, that's where my parents live, and like I said, it's been our home for the majority of our lives. Basically, I think as a description, you probably is a sort of a way to illustrate Ashington. If you think of Coronation Street, the long rows, that sort of the look, that sort of look. It's an old mining village. It grew and was originally it was basically a farm, and then or a couple of farms, house states, whatever, and then the discovery of the coal and exploration of the coal created Ashington as we know today, or what became in the 50s, certainly the 40s, 50s, 60s, a booming mining town. There's still families, when I come back here, there's people whose families have been here for years. You still recognise the names. Yeah, there's definitely sort of a continuity about Ashington, definitely. Well, that's me there, number 33. Good old number 33. Obviously, that's a competition in Butlins. I can't remember it at all, but I can remember Butlins. And, I had them sort of holidays, I think a couple of times, that sort of holiday camp. It was something you could afford. Sometimes that was sort of the luxury holiday, I suppose. Sometimes we couldn't afford that, and the holidays would sort of go, basically around the local beaches. You'd stay in the locality, or it was a caravan up the coast. But so I remember a little bit about Butlins and the colours, but not a great lot. And just that sort of magical idea when you're young and you have all these sort of little amusements and bright colours. But that's about all I remember about Butlins. I was quite young at the time, so. Okay. Oh, we had a really sort of close family life. I think Ashington at the time was a very close community as well. Basically it's that sort of a nuclear family. So we lived here. One of my grandmas lived 2 streets over. My other grandma and granddad lived 1 street down. My uncle and auntie lived in Ashington and Hull Avenue away. My other auntie and uncle lived 3 streets that way. And it's basically, it was like a family thing. Everybody just moved out from a certain area but lived in the same sort of area anyway, same sort of grasp of Ashington. My dad worked as a miner most of his life, but did other jobs. He'd been in the RAF. He worked in a chemical factory, but in the end, he sort of spent most of his time in the pits, being a predominantly mining town. But then so did my uncle, my granddad, my cousin. So it was very much a mining industry. Yeah, there was always that support from family. Obviously, every day you could go and see my grandma across 2 streets away, and then up to see my other grandma, probably get some pocket money, to be honest. But there was always that closeness and support as well. If there was difficult times when there was no money, for instance, during strikes, there was a lot of sort of support from locals and as well as family. And that was one of the good times as well. Despite it was a bad time, it was interesting how there'd be a knock at the door, and then you go to the door, there's nobody there but just a bag of food and tins of food and things like that. Or somebody slip sort of £5 or £10 through the sort of letterbox. So there was that sort of close community as well. But it was like extended family, but there was also that, other extended families embedded together. So those different sort of families all living in the same way, but they're all interacting together and they all had the same sort of interests, sort of culturally, or, you went and met at the pub and shared sort of social times with them basically. You can obviously see by the haircut, that's 1970s. That's myself and my brother. Early 70s, I'd say. Or mid 70s, yeah. It's that sort of 76, 77 or whatever, 75, 76.
So at that time, when you'd be maybe 12 there, 13, something like that?
Yeah, definitely about 12.
Was there still, even when you're getting older, still that sense of community and that sense of the extended family?
Yes, without a doubt, definitely. Certainly in the 70s, and even in the 80s, obviously well into the 80s. When I was even older, when I was 18, 19, I spent time going around with my dad to the local clubs. It was a club sort of circuit, the social clubs. And there was a definite community there where you met the same sort of people who obviously same sort of families, and people you knew from when I was younger, people would be popping in, and you met their sort of family as well in the pubs and clubs around Ashington. So there's a very close-knit community, I'd say, and everybody knew everybody. And so you could walk into the club and you know somebody, and somebody would know you or recognise you. Now, at the time I was actually working for bookmakers, local bookmakers, and that was my lunch break, and I popped out to see my parents, and my mum insisted on taking me photograph, as they do. So that was about the period where yeah, I was quite young, early 20s. So I've been sort of, yeah, knocking around sort of the local sort of area. And like we were talking before about security, certainly felt more secure being in Ashington with, the people you know, the people you sort of, like the local families and that, you knew where you stood. And I was always sort of, I wasn't really inclined to go to sort of the city, the town, because it was quite comfortable being in Ashington. And and you felt safe, basically safe and secure. So that was about the period, that sort of period. The working men culture basically originates from the mines as well. It was it was set up. The idea was to actually provide sort of entertainment for one, cheap beer as well, and it was a union. It was basically a union to supply cheap beer, subsidised beer, for the locals, because obviously at times people weren't rich. It was quite a bit of poverty in Ashington at times. So there was this working men's culture, and in Ashington was very much, I think they called it at once like the little Las Vegas, because there was so much going on. Unlike today, where you had TVs and home entertainment, everybody went out and entertained themselves. I think it was 5 picture houses. I think the population was 40,000. But 5 picture houses, several dance halls, and something like 30 working men's clubs. And so there was basically singing, dancing, bingos, pie nights. So there was entertainment on there. And everybody used to entertain themselves as well. You used to have people who used to get up and do a sing-song as well. So the old-time karaoke, I suppose. I think there was a very strong sense of belonging. I think when talking to parents, they basically claim that was changing. They could see the changes from their day. It was a greater sense of belonging. But perhaps that's the post-war thing as well, how everybody felt together because they were under threat. I think the community, because people trusted each other, there was a certain sense of belonging to the community. It was created through interactions with each other. So there was that communal sense where if you were struggling or having a bad time, there was, like I mentioned before, somebody will help you out, or they'll give you a little soup, or they'll help you with food and that. And they were there to sort of give you some sort of moral support as well. There was a definite community there, without a doubt.
And do you think that still exists now?
I wouldn't say it didn't exist. I think it's obviously not as strong as it used to be. I think there's still elements there. And I think certainly with some of the older generation, I think they're still, I still see, we've talked about basically, when you come back, do you see the same sort of people, or has it changed? And it is sort of the tradition, some of the same families are still here, and they still have that same connection with people in the community. And I still see people, you can walk in the places today, walk in the pubs, you see the same people who were in pubs 20 years ago, still socialising together. A lot older, of course. Mm-hmm. So there's still that element there, but I think it's more fragmented. It's different now. The Ashington's changed as housing goes as well. There's new estates. People's come from outside, and it's not that they don't belong. I think it's just a slightly different sort of culture now. Mm. And I think that basically because the industry isn't there, the mining industry, because it was hard work, I think that was almost a binding social glue almost that brought everybody together. They had, I think in the past people had a cause. They all had the same sort of experience, and they fought for their rights, holidays, increased pay, better conditions. So there was almost a natural unionized sort of element to culture as well. You see what I mean? So, well, basically, my employment history. Unfortunately, I was unemployed after school. Things were a bit tough, and we basically went into the miners' strike, and obviously a lot of miners at the time were looking for jobs to supplement sort of the strike pay, so it was very difficult. There was a lot of people unemployed. I did do a few part-time jobs, working in supermarkets, doing a little bit of sort of doing boards in the bookmakers, and also ended up on a community programme for the YMCA as like a youth leader. In the end, I ended up as a trainee manager for the bookmakers. As I say, this photograph there is from about that time. And I worked there for 13 years. Then I moved on to going to university as a mature student. After that, unemployed, unfortunately, for a little while, and I'm presently working in a call centre. The reason I ended up doing a degree as a mature student was, I think it's just like anybody else. You get into a routine and you want a bit of a challenge. And one other element was basically because of the miners' strike had been very much politicised by what I'd seen and what I'd heard and how it affected the community. So I had a very sort of keen sort of political sense, and so I got interested in things like history and philosophy. I did a few other subjects as well. And in time I thought, well, why not when I got to university. So I did an HFC, including sociology, got myself to university to do politics and sociology degree, and then a master's in politics research. But that was for me, I did my degree not for, it wasn't the thought of what job, it was more of what I was interested in and what I enjoyed and what was fascinating about sort of society, culture and politics basically. Well, I think any town that was under duress from the miners' strike, I mean, I think they did feel embattled because obviously there was lots of things going on. I mean, there was a media interpretation or portrayal of the miners' strike which didn't reflect what was happening on the ground. But also there was divisions within the community as well, where some people obviously under pressure to pay bills were going back to work. There was a whole scab issue, and it was quite, there was the horrible side where it was quite, it was almost like a war of attrition, but also a war amongst the community as well as the government sort of policies towards miners, because there were changing rules about picketing and also benefits. You couldn't claim benefits. It was almost like starvation, trying to starve the miners into submission basically. So, but even despite the war and that, there's still lots of positive aspects which I've mentioned before, where people were actually supporting you, and we had like I said, money put through the door and food left in the yard, that sort of thing. Basically, the extended family came under pressure during the miners' strike, but we're lucky in the sense that we didn't. I think we all had the same sort of principle that fight the end. Every one of them. I think my cousin, my uncle, and my dad, who were in the pits at the time, went back behind the banner. I think if somebody had become one of the scabs, it would have been a different thing altogether. I think it might have been obviously a lot more pressure. But as far as the extended family goes, we did there was a lot of support with each other, but we had to put up with pretty difficult times, straitened times, and there wasn't the money there. So obviously that causes pressures in itself, causes friction, and there's always that sort of day-to-day living where you're all together and you tend to irritate each other because there's a lot of pressure on, but nobody's got no sort of outlet or way to sort of resolve the issue. It's just you're just biding your time. And them days I used to do lots of walking. So that's with my wife at the time. And basically we used to do anything from coast to coast, around the Cornwall coast, West Highland Way. Even devised our own sort of walks, but we used to like spend time in Keswick, which is obviously just across the opposite side of the country, other lakes, anywhere in the lakes, to do these walks. I think since the miners' strike, I think there's definitely been a deterioration as far as community goes. I can't say it's not there. There's still elements. I mean, it's not a black and white picture, but it's not quite the same as it used to be. Definitely, I think there's lots of factors. It's not just a question of the miners' strike as well. It's a question of technology. Things have changed. People are more inclined to sit in and watch TV now. There's the expense of going out. It's more expensive to go out. It's easier to stay in the house and drink, take away, watch TV. So I think there's lots of factors going on. But I think that definite community side has sort of faded to a great extent. I mean, I think one element of evidence for that is actually the decline of the working men's clubs as well. They've all either been taken over, clubs become pubs, so that's changed. And there's not as much sort of nightlife around Ashington now. I've thought about how the community. I mean, because it's around you all the time, it's that whole thing like my parents. I said before, my parents both say like, when I was young, that the community wasn't as strong. It wasn't. You couldn't leave. There was examples like you could leave your door open. Everybody trusted each other, but there was also the element that perhaps there was nothing to steal because we was poor as well. And as I was getting older, I thought there was a definite community and it was a strong community. But I think, yes, that's changed. And I do recognise that I've lived through what is the decline of Ashington. On saying that, that's not to say that Ashington hasn't got a prospect for the future as well. I think there is, possibilities. And I think certainly through, I think it's ground level. I think that's where it's going to start. That ground level, people do things for themselves and rebuild the community. Because I think, history goes in cycles. They have decline and then, ascendancy again. So I think it will go again. I hope so. It'd be nice.
So I'm slightly getting out of my own comfort zone in the way I'm going to describe this now, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you think about our Australian partners in this project, they describe, I think, people, not just who are old, but people who have become wise in certain areas as the elders. Mm-hmm. When you were growing up within your community, were the people who, had you known about that kind of phraseology, you'd have described as the elders?
I would describe people in Ashton as wise elders, yes. If I'd known the phrases, I would have said, yeah, that was wise people, definitely. And particularly sort of around your family. I mean, you just need to look at your own family. I mean, my granddad, for example, he spent, obviously his life in the pits. I think it was 50 years. He got a little carriage clock for his 50 years and continued after that. But he spent a lot of time, obviously, fighting for rights. He fought against Tory government strikes. He went through the Depression. And basically, he had lots of things that he told me that sort of alerted me to different things. I mean, for example, like Winston Churchill is a great hero of sort of World War II and British history. Yet my granddad didn't have any respect for Winston Churchill. And things he told me around the miners and what happened to the miners and how Churchill, his attitude towards the working class, actually made me think about, what we're seeing on TV, what was read in the books wasn't the full picture. So I think there's like a wisdom that wasn't in the wise books. It was actually local wisdom as well. Yes, I do feel I am part of other people's community. I'm not sure whether it's as strong as it used to be, but I do feel part of community. I do feel like I have got something to contribute as well. And I do feel people, do sort of not rely on us, but do sort of will sort of come to me and ask sort of for advice, or would like to spend time with us. And I think that's all part of almost like there's a very negative attitude about a drinking culture in like the north as well. And yet the strange thing is that drinking culture wasn't excessive necessarily. I mean, you always get some people who would, but it was about actually socialising. I think it's still the same today, where you meet people, you have a drink, but it's not about drinking. It's more about the social thing, about talking about issues, about people's problems and how you can help people, or even if it's just a question of advice or sit and listen. Sometimes just sit and listen. So yeah, I think that's definitely there still. I would say our life's not too bad at the moment. I am employed, which is probably a bonus today in some respects. Although I am on a 0-hour contract, which isn't a positive thing. I don't think there's as much security. I feel quite insecure as well. There's moments where you're struggling, things are a bit on the edge. There's not that sort of. I don't feel like I've got anything for a rainy day. There's a little bit of sort of precariousness about life. There's definitely that insecurity. I felt that sort of recently when my job, there was always a chance of sort of we put in for a new contract and we could sort of lose that contract as well. And there's always that 2 months time you could be unemployed. It's just overnight almost. It feels like, what do you do? So there's insecurity definitely. But otherwise, personal way, I feel sort of pretty good about life, and I feel like I can contribute, and I think I do in several different ways. When you think about, when I was younger, one of the things I didn't want to do was to work in the mines. It's strange, but although that's the basis of what Ashton is and Ashton culture, I mean, the underpinning element is definitely the industry in the mines and how people work together. And that was the solidarity to a great extent. But I didn't want to go down the pits myself. And I think there's always this thing about, if you are part of that heavy industry, whether it's docks or whatever, or factory work, I think the parents especially want you to escape the same sort of lifestyle, which is sort of ironic and a bit paradoxical in the sense that, it is a nice culture, there's a nice community, but then they want you to do better, whatever doing better is. And one of the paradoxes about the miners' strike is that they were closing pits, which in one sense you think, well, it's a horrible industry, that's a good thing. But it isn't about closing pits, it was the way it was done. It was about actually destroying communities. Now, you can close pits and close heavy industry, but do it over a period of time. And I think that's, to me, what happened in the miners' strike while I was politicised. It wasn't about the end of pits, because I didn't want to be working, to be quite honest. It was about how it was done.
Why do you think people thought that you had to get out of the mines? What was it that they thought you had? What was better? Was it a social thing, or was it just safety?
I think, no, it was more about, actually, it was a dirty, horrible job, to be fair. I think, going down the pits. I remember periods when my father and my grandfather would, they're basically leaving early morning, it would be dark in the winter, and when they came home it was dark, and for weeks that's their life. It was in darkness all the time. I think it's a dirty, horrible job, and you can't see it otherwise. And that's why there was a lot of sort of issues about getting recompense for how horrible the job was, and the dangers, of course, as well. I think everybody, it's a working class culture, and that I think people always aspire to better, want a better life, whether it's a nicer house, or they want that first car, or they want their children to do better in life. You know, want their kids to be teachers, for example, instead of going down the pit. And I think that's, I think anybody wants to do something that is a little bit better than, heavy industry. Like I say, it isn't a pleasant experience, and I certainly didn't want to do it. It's just horrible. That claustrophobic as well. Claustrophobic of dust and darkness. A mile down. I just cannot imagine a mile of rock above you. It's like, whoa. I think issues of pride when it comes to sort of work are very complicated. I don't think it's a straightforward answer. I think, first of all, I think pride comes from, doing a good job, but that's based on, as well, the idea of security. I think as long as you've got a secure job, you're trained well, you've got respect from others, and you feel like you're contributing to society in some sort of major way. I think it's your contribution. You feel like you're an essential part of general society and industry. I think some jobs today are more, it's more like a cog in a machine where you're asked to do a tick box exercise, I'm not saying them sort of jobs weren't around in the past, but I think there's sometimes where people feel, they're not contributing in any valuable way. That's almost like I say, tick boxes. They don't see where their life's going, and it's the insecurity. I think the idea of low pay, insecure work means they can't invest. You can't invest in your own community if you're not getting good wages. How do you sort of, if you're struggling to pay your rent, to pay your bills, then your whole life's focused around those issues. So I think, when the mines there was a certain point with the mines, for example, where the wages were really good. People had plenty of money, and the money was used in the community. You spend, if you have money, you spend it in the community. So that is in itself, the circulation of money in the community does actually make a lot of difference as well, because it's not just your insecurities, it's about, the local shops, the corner shops and things like that as well. Once the community starts dying because there's no money, then you get into a spiral, that undermines the sense of culture and community, I think.
Do you think you can have a strong sense of community without that shared circumstance, maybe, or shared employment situation? I don't know.
I think it doesn't necessarily have to be work based. I think it can, but I think generally speaking, like going back to the mines, there was a shared community because people had the same dangers, and where today, if society sort of fragmented, people's doing bits of jobs here and there, and obviously the whole thing about unions as well. I think that's important. That's died. I think that's got a double-edged sword as well. That's dying because people don't have that sort of same sort of commonality as far as employment goes. But I think certainly when you're in a heavy industry with lots of workers, you've all got the same sort of goals, or very similar goals, and same sort of experiences. So I think that's, in a way, it's like a binding element where I've experienced down the pit where it's like, this is unfair, but other people have. And I think that creates a sense of community or a sense of union with each other. And I think that's how, how a community marches on or moves on, because of them similarities. So I think there is a definite sort of momentum from that sort of thing. In a community where you feel like your job's insecure, you kind of build relationships if you haven't got a long-term job. I think if you're thinking about where's the next bill come from, where's the next job, it's fragmentary. Basically, you become individuals and not part of the community. So I think that's divisive. I think employment should be more about than just wages and what's good for the GDP. It's about actually what's good for society. And I think you should be thinking about how a job contributes to a good society as well, or employment.
Do you think solidarity was something that was, cultivated in people culturally, or did it just become so instinctive that people didn't even think about it anymore?
I think solidarity is, you got to put things in context. I think quite nice when it comes to solidarity. I think you look back, and certainly my parents' generation or my grandparents, came from a situation in World War II where it's almost an enforced solidarity, because a nation becomes united. A bomb will drop on anybody's house. It's very, bombs are very democratic, you could say. That, they land on a rich person's house as well as a poor person's house. And that makes, that brings everybody back to the same level, instead of sort of having, a fragmented society. Everybody suddenly have the same sort of concerns and issues. So I think the post-war, certainly after World War II created that solidarity on a national scale, which had been created already there with, industries like mines and, shipyards and that as well. So I think certainly the solidarity is brought is partly not naturally instinctive, but about it can be partly self-interest as well. That that's what you're interested in. This is what you want out of life, and because there's other people with that or experience the same thing. I think it comes down to experience. I don't think you think way through it. Don't think you say, well, I think we should be a community and enforce it. It's about experience. And I think sort of the experiences of industry or war does bring people together in a sense of solidarity.
Can you think of any examples of solidarity today? Just everyday examples, do you reckon?
I think a sport, to me, like football, obviously, unites people. And I think, I'm not sort of saying, I don't want to be sort of too negative about today. I think there's certainly, I've seen a certain growth in sort of things like social movements. I think there's a certain thing about, governments represent you. Then once people start feeling the government's not quite so legitimate, you see a rise in people who link together through their similar concerns, and you do have a sort of certain growth in social movements. And so I think there's been a definite growth. I mean, not so long ago, we had a massive, the greatest or the biggest demonstration against the war in Iraq. I mean, it was the biggest in history, which so goes against the grain about apathy in sort of the UK about politics. It shows there's no apathy at all. Actually, people's really concerned, but it needs that experience, that thing that unites everybody together to have that solidarity. I think that's how, and I think there's definitely elements today, and there's definitely times where people are very united. I think as far as action goes, I think there's definitely, I think no place escapes from the anxieties of, social situations, and certainly there was a lot of anxiety during the miners' strike, without a doubt. But I think what community does, a smaller community, I think the difference between like cities and towns is, it's a closer, everybody knows what's going on in your small village, but when a city tends to be, because it's large, it tends to be, people tend to be a bit more lonely or disconnected at times. So I think, it depends on several factors, but certainly size of towns as well. But I think Ashington did provide a certain link as well because of obviously the industry, because it was a mining town. I think that definitely makes a difference, yeah. The only thing I'd say there's inequalities, when it comes to Ashington, you'd say there'd be a posher end of town with the slightly bigger houses. But apart from that, there wasn't a great sense of inequality. I think the miners' strike brought out divisions, so people started seeing inequalities. People sort of would say like, well, you're going back there to work to your scab, and you've got a car, but we haven't. So why don't you just give up your car? There was but that's the divisions that can sort of be created through the social anxiety of sort of stress of the fear, like you say, the fear factor of what could happen to you, how you could plunge into poverty. And I think there's the good reason. I think certainly my grandparents were very similar to that, in the sense that they did have a strong deference to authority. If the doctor said something, that was law. If the policeman said something, it's law. And there was a fear of, and there's this always thing about money as well. You have to go out and earn your money, and that's what it is. You work hard and you'll be rewarded. But I think that's changed now, and it's changed for the better, in the sense that it shouldn't have that fear. There should be a benefit system. And I told my granddad when he was in the pits, obviously, if he lost his job, they'd be out on the street basically with nothing, sleep on the streets. And even my parents, when I was young, there was people, or just before I was born, there was people in Ashington who could end up on the streets as well, who didn't have the money to pay for a house.
How might we take some of the really good stuff that you've talked about there, and utilise it in the present? How how can we take the lessons of historical Ashington and sustain them and enrich them, do you reckon?
Well, I think to enhance and sustain sort of the lessons of what we've learned from history, basically, is for people to learn my history. I think it's very important. But I think also to make connections between what people experience today in work or unemployment and what happened in the past. I think it's back to about people almost just communicating again. But then it's one of them catch-22s where do you start the communication? How do you get people together? And it's about finding new ways in what is evolving communities. I think of getting people together and finding issues that that unite everybody, that everybody's experiencing as well, not just individuals, but seeing what is common amongst people's experiences in society. I think that's a starting point. But how to change it, that's a big question. how, sort of, what's the answer? Wow, what's the meaning of life?
But I mean, can you remember debt aversion in Ashington?
I remember my own debt aversion. And sort of, I wouldn't say I remembered it, but I see how debt aversion, I saw debt aversion manifest itself through the values of the community, how people, always valued money, being frugal, saving money for a rainy day, how about sharing. That basically, the idea of sharing isn't necessarily, oh, look at me, I'll go to heaven. It's about, if I help somebody in straitened times, they'll help me back. It's about, we all could be in this situation. And I think it's our recognition, the fear, fear and experience. You recognise in other people the potential for your, future downfall or misery, and so that I think that's sort of one of the binding things as well. That you can link people together, and people go, "Wow, I don't want that to happen to me," so they support each other. And I think it's it's not nobody's. I don't think there's any perfectly altruistic person out there or perfectly totally selfish person out there, although more likely to be more selfish. But I think it's a self-interest with the altruism as well. I think both of them work together.